this video, we're going to cover line charts and area charts, and we're going to cover a very important concept, which is called discrete and continuous. And I'm going to kind of give a kind of heads up warning that you may not get it straight away. That's okay. It takes kind of a bit of repetition, a bit of time, seeing it in different kind of situations before you really understand how it works. But we're going to go through it really quickly, and we're going to be doing a lot of case studies so you can see it in action and it'll start to click. I usually see people really understand it maybe, in terms of time, several hours into using it and then using it for their own data, and then they'll go, oh, now it makes sense. So let's start with a simple line chart. And line charts typically is over time. So what we want to look for is any data set that has a calendar or a calendar and a little clock. The one we have here is a calendar. The one with the little clock means it has a date and a time together. But for now, we're just going to use this calendar. And I'm just going to simply double click. And that's going to bring in the data that I have, which is from 2018 to 2021. And let's look at a measure, because for a line chart, you need two things, an x-axis and a y-axis. So let's let's do quantity for this one. And I'm going to click and drop it in rows. And straight away you can see it's a line. The unusual thing is when we used some different kind of dimensions, such as a string or a state, it gives me a bar chart. Well, why is that? The main reason is because if you look here in the marks card, it's set to automatic. And the way Tableau does that is based on the data types that you use to construct your visualization, it will try and guess, well, this is probably the best visualization for that type of data. But you can control this, and I'll show you that once we get into area charts. I can actually expand this. So this is at what we call a year level granularity, or a year level of detail. So we can expand this using this little plus symbol. So by doing this, I can actually expand it from years into quarters, from quarters into months, and from months into days. And again, going back to that date and time data type, if you had hours, minutes, and seconds, you can even go down to that granularity, which is really good for, let's say high-speed operations, things like working in a call center where you need to know things second by second. All right, going backwards. Actually, before we go backwards, one thing to notice with the discrete type is that it only shows the data points that exist. Notice that if we come down here, it goes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's no 8. Well, why is there no 8? Well, because this is a discrete representation of the data. If we want something that shows every single point, well, then we need what's called a continuous representation. The other disadvantage of using the discrete over the continuous, especially when you have a really long time scale, is I can't see it in one picture. You can see that here that I have to scroll all the way to the right to see what's going on. So it's very hard for me to see, well, was there a jump? Was there a concentration in a given month? Was there, a massive drop somewhere else? I can't see that. So we want something that can squash in. So there are instances where the discrete is really good, and we will get into that when we get into examples. And there are situations where continuous is really good. And again, we'll go through that in the examples. So let's reduce this again. I'm just going to press these minus symbols. By the way, this plus and minus, that is built into the dates. So anytime you have a date format, that will be generated. So you don't have to worry. So going back to the beginning, we're going to now switch this to a continuous representation. And it's so easy to do. We click on this blue one right here, which they call these pills. How about that? From here, when I right click, I can see that there's year, quarter, month, day, and then again, year, quarter, month, day. The reason is these ones are your discrete choices, which they should have put a little heading in there or something. And then here you have your continuous representations. If I go to quarter, this actually shows me the sum of the quantity by quarter. But this quarter actually contains every quarter one for every year in my data set. Sometimes we want that, sometimes we don't. But I actually want to see it going over time. To really confirm that that has every year, you can use this function. If you click a data point or data points and you just hover, this part tricks people because they try and right click and do all sorts of things. So you just click and wait. And what happens is this toolbar comes up And if it disappears, you just hover. You don't have to click anything. Just give it a second and it'll come up. For slower computers, it takes like a fraction longer. We click this button right here. And this is the view data function. And that lets us view what's actually in here. This is great for data exploration. You'll see it in action later on. Ah, it's amazing. From here, it gives us really three views. The first one is a summary, which is just this one point right here. Quarter one, 5,249, which is the vertical value. If I click here to full data, it gives me a little bit more. It breaks that data up a lot more. Full data, you can see it's actually showing me the entire data set. Typically what happens is it's actually like this when you first click on it. It's only showing you the fields required but broken up to represent that data point. But you can actually view the entire data set by clicking show all fields. If we look in order date, is it order date we're using? Yes, order date. And we look at this one. All these values, if you look at it carefully, they're all from the first quarter. You can see Feb, March, January, Feb. You're not going to see anything else. And what it's doing is it's adding all the quarter ones for every year in my data set. I don't want to do that. Sometimes I want to see the quarters across the years. So let's close this. I can actually right click here. And instead of this quarter, I can set it to, let's say, this quarter. Now what we see is 2018 quarter one, 2018 quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, and then we get to 2019 quarter one, two, three, four, because it's now representing continuously. I can change the granularity or the level of detail. Let's go month. And I can see there's some cycles now starting to appear. And this is very important because sometimes certain granularity gives you certain information, and then that will determine what actions you take as a business. So from here, I can see there's some granularity. We can expand this further. Let's go month. I can see there's some more cycles now. Let's go week. You can see, oh, there's a little bit more, but this is probably too much. Now it's getting harder to make some decisions. And if I'm reporting to senior executives, they don't really want to see this. Maybe something like this is a lot simpler. That is the basics of line chart. There is so much you could do with line charts. It will blow your mind. And some really creative things that people have done on Tableau Public. That's just, even today, I'm still learning so much about the capabilities of this software. Let's talk about area charts. Well, right before we get into area charts, let's say I showed this to my manager or my boss on my team. And I said, this is the sum of the quantity of units sold in this time period. And they're going to say, well, that's for everything. Well, what about the category? What about the segment? Is it the same in every single category? Well, let's have a look. I can take category and drop this into here, into color. And what that does is it splits up my sum of quantity into separate colors. Boom. And you can see that actually office supplies is way higher than the other two. And the blue and the orange, which is office furniture, sorry, the orange is office supplies, and the office furniture and technology are actually very closely correlated. That's interesting. That's some insight. Maybe it means something when we talk to the right people. One of the things I can't do in this particular view is for this point, let's say the very last one, I have about 1200 quantity, I have 412, and I have 233. That gives it to me individually. What if I wanted to know the total of those three? Well, it's a bit hard to tell here. So what we can use is an area chart. And an area chart is basically a line chart with volume, but they're stacked on top of one another. The way I change that is if I open this marks card and I select area, it will force that visualization. So we go area. And you can see what it's done is it's stacked it. It doesn't look like it did because it would happen so quickly. But if I go back to automatic, look at this maximum value here. So 1200 all the way across. Once I switch to area, watch that vertical axis. It switches to 1800. It just happens so quickly. This is the sum of all three. Hang on, I'm going to click on the top of my head here. This is the sum of all three. Again, it's a different way to visualize the same data. For what you're applying it to, it may be useful, it may not. Part of being an analyst is trying different visualizations. Some of them click, some of them don't. I've had instances where I've built something I thought was amazing, right? And then I showed it to people and they're like, I don't get it, I don't like it, it's confusing. And I'm like, really? but that's how it works. It's hit and miss. So having the ability to switch between them very easily is a massive advantage. And I'll give you a quick 20-second demo. Let's say someone goes, I don't like area charts. Well, we can switch that to a line chart. Oh no, maybe I want a bar chart. Oh, well, maybe I want them separated. Well, maybe not like that. I want them vertically separated. Okay, great. So you can see how easy it is to switch from one to another. That means your development is so quick and your delivery of solutions is also remarkably quick. That is how you do line and area charts, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to learn the entire Tableau platform, consider enrolling into my course. It's one of the highest ranking courses on Udemy, and enrolling today, you'll be joining the almost 200,000 students that have enjoyed my courses over the years. Thanks again for watching, and hope to see you in the course.